Hi, this is Richard Gordon, and welcome back to another episode of The Possible Human. Well, what is possible is expanding, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem possible for us to make a video of this call, but I am so happy to have Deborah Gare again, and this time also Tyler Odysseus. And we're going to talk about mental health issues. And in the years that I've been doing energy work and energy healing, some of my students coined a new word. And when miracles become normal, you just can't keep calling them miracles all the time. So they coined a word, Normacle. So that's what we're going to be discussing today, is Normacles. And both Deborah and Tyler have been doing a lot of work with what you might call mental health issues, brain issues, and we'd like to cover things like bipolar, seasonal affective disorder, autism, phobias, addictions, habituations, on and on. So I'd introduce Deborah and Tyler. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Richard.
It's good to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on the call.
Well, so were you working with mental health issues before the level 2 quantum touch came along, or was it something that just made it better?
Sorry, Tyler.
No, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I was working with mental health issues before, Richard, but before the level 2 came along. But I was finding them quite tricky to work with the standard quantum touch. I was working in London at the time and was coming across an awful lot of stockbrokers who were incredibly stressed out and were suffering with a wide range of stress conditions. At that time, I was also coming across a lot of military personnel with post-traumatic stress disorder, and I was looking for something else that would really help alleviate some of the symptoms that they were experiencing. And then the level 2 work came along, and what the level 2 did was, when I applied that, people were reporting, especially soldiers and stockbrokers, massive differences in the amount of stress they were experiencing. So that was my first observation, really, was a massive reduction in stress.
This is so exciting to me because my work has been mostly on pain reduction and inflammation, accelerating healing, but I hadn't focused that much on the mental health issues. And so I'm really thrilled to have you both who have worked on these things. So I know there's a whole lot of conditions I'd like to talk about, and these are, of course, anecdotal experiences, but the fact that they happen as often as they do is very promising. So, Tyler, what kind of conditions have you worked on, or just name one anyway, that you've noticed?
I've worked on a variety. The most common condition that I've worked on is chronic depression, or one level of depression. And then some of the more complicated things would include things like severe anorexia.
These are fabulous topics to talk about. Let's start with depression. So, what have you seen, Tyler?
Well, I have seen absolutely miraculous results, and in my experience, it's been much, much faster than traditional psychotherapy. Again, it's anecdotal evidence, but the people I've worked with, in many cases, they've come in with such chronic depression that they're unable to leave the house or unable to self-activate. And within about 3 sessions, they're getting to the point where they're I had one client email me that she was out at the beach with her husband and watching a kite show, and this was the first time she'd been out of the house in 6 months, and she was just having a fantastic weekend with her husband, having really been confined to the house because she was so depressed prior to the work. And I used level 2, and I also worked on sending energy directly to the emotions, and so there was a lot of very, very fast benefit She had immediate relief after one session, but after 3 sessions, she was already leaving the house. And then she continued to work with me over a period of time, and over about 18 months, she achieved many of her lifelong dreams, a dream of being an author. She authored 3 books and, was out of her dead-end job. So, people have seen absolutely life-transforming changes through this work.
And Deborah, in terms of depression, what kind of things have you seen?
Oh, I had a lady who sounds very similar to Tyler's patient with a diagnosis of the seasonally affective disorder, where she was incredibly depressed, had been for maybe 30 years or something, so it was a very long-term condition. She tried everything, and basically nothing worked whatsoever. And she was a lady probably in her 60s, and a really interesting side effect to the complete alleviation of her SAD disorder was that she quit smoking without thinking about it. She'd been a smoker all of her life, and I've heard of countless occurrences of this phenomena where people come for a session of the brain work, the level 2 work, and they suddenly have this impetus to quit smoking, and it happens so naturally. And I've seen this time and time again, and it happened with this lady, and her whole life has been transformed. She was a smoker for 40 some years.
Wow.
And she'd tried everything to give it up. Nothing had worked. And the quantum touch, it just removed the need to the addiction. The addiction literally dissolved.
All right. Now, how many sessions did you get, Deborah?
About 3 sessions, Richard. All distant sessions.
All right. Now, this is really interesting because you're both talking about doing a series of sessions, and no doubt you probably saw some results early on, too. So
definitely.
Okay,
yeah.
So you made progress. This is a very important point. Now, where did you focus the energy? Just inside her brain in general, or in specific parts of the brain?
Yeah, my intention was simply for the brain as an entirety. I'm not a neuroscientist. I don't know what each part of the brain does, but the level 2 work is just so elegant. With the power of your intent, the energy is so intelligent. It knows where to go and what to do, and so it obviously went to where it was needed and done exactly what it did, and it was just wonderful.
Wow. And Tyler, what about you in terms of how and where you sent the energy?
Well, I would agree with Deborah that you can really send it to the whole brain.
Yeah.
I have experimented when it comes to addiction in sending it to areas of the brain that are addiction centers. But part is really what Deborah said about intent and the power of your intent. And I had one client where I worked, and as I was working, I visualized chemical pathways for positivity reconnecting throughout the brain. And I ran energy on the whole brain during that process, but I just visualized inside the brain all these chemical pathways for positivity reconnecting. And that particular client lifted out of a 6-month depression after one session. And we didn't do any talking or anything. It's just a session where I ran energy directly on the brain, and with the power of intent and the energy. And as Deborah mentioned, the energy knows where to go. And when you guide it a little more with your own intent, it really can have a miraculous effect.
Well, it's always been one of the big themes that I've talked about is that the energy goes where it's needed, and the universe understands our intent and will utilize it to the best advantage. And yet this is such a fascinating thing that the traditional scientists believe that matter is not intelligent and the universe is not intelligent, and therefore they won't even begin to consider, study, or even take seriously the kinds of things that both of you are seeing on a regular basis now. So, what about, well, let's just take another one, like anorexia.
The lady I worked on with anorexia, she was on a clock. In other words, she had a beeper that would go off in the morning and tell her to eat something. She had a beeper that would go off at lunchtime and tell her to eat a power bar. And she had this timer with her at all times that would tell her to eat something, because prior to instituting the timer, she was starving herself to death. In a single session, worked on her brain, and over the next week and a half or so, her anorexia just vanished. She just started eating normally, and she stopped needing the clock. And, she didn't get overweight or be underweight. She was just a normal weight. And this has been about 3.5 years now, and she still is not using the clock, and she's no longer an anorexic. And, sometimes these conditions, they're ready to heal. They're looking for something like quantum touch to come along and give them that last little boost of energy that they need to get over the edge and into the healing state. And it's almost like it has a momentum of its own. So once the healing begins, the body's natural intelligence takes over and says, hey, we're on a healing path now. We've made a lot of progress. Let's keep healing. So in this particular case, this lady's entire life path changed, and she became a yoga instructor, getting certified in multiple different disciplines, is teaching in Long Beach now, and has just found an absolutely amazing boyfriend, and she just has a really great life at this point. And this is from a place before where she was really in a state of mental disease. And this lady as well was with a single session. Now, not every client is done with a single session, especially, certain emotional issues and life traumas. People benefit from multiple sessions. But in this particular case, with this client that had anorexia, it was one session that was so transformative and started the process.
Yeah, some people respond more quickly than others, but it's very important to realize that these miracles don't just always happen like, snap of the fingers or something, that they're a process. And Deborah, have you had any opportunity to work with anorexics?
Oh, I have, and like Tyler, have witnessed just the most stunning things, and also bulimia and BDD, body dysmorphic disorder. And one particular girl that I was working on was so claustrophobic as well as anorexic with this body dysmorphic disorder that she developed, obsessional compulsive disorders, major fears, really didn't want to go out, didn't want to be around people. She was so withdrawn, and just a couple of distant healing sessions with quantum touch, the level 2 work. And she's a happy girl. She's going out on holiday with her parents. She's really enjoying herself in family celebrations that involve food. She's enjoying herself again. She's got her life back, and she's a happy girl in comparison to how she was. It's just remarkable, the potential of this work.
So if I'm clear, body dysmorphic condition is where a person can't accept their body the way it is. Is that right?
Absolutely,
okay.
Yeah. They have a very distorted view of themselves, yeah.
Wow. And the judgments and the criticism and all that.
Yes, there's sort of a negative self-talk going on all the time,
Now, I would imagine that if a skeptical person was listening to this, they might be thinking to themselves, well, you're cherry picking and just telling me a few happy results out of hundreds of negative or inconsequential sessions that you gave.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that that's probably an accurate representation. We are talking about some of our most loved stories, absolutely.
Yeah.
But they truly are commonplace. It's come to the point where, most of the clients get absolute relief. And as Deborah mentioned, most of these sessions are distant sessions. We're connecting over the telephone or perhaps over Skype. And the energy isn't going over the phone or over Skype. It's going through the universe. It's popping out of this dimension and back into this dimension where the client is. And if a situation arises where a client comes in, I find that direct energy work using level 2 quantum touch and level 1 quantum touch combined in the brain area and throughout the whole body will lift them up and give them the energy to start feeling again. And that's a key piece of this, because when a client is able to start feeling their emotions, they quickly come into harmony with the body. So if there's a client who gets an energy session and is raised up a certain level, but they want to go further and direct energy is not moving them as quickly as they would like, then in those situations, I start working more on the emotions. I ask them where they feel the emotions in their body.
Mm-hmm.
Are they feeling it in their heart area or in their chest? Where do they feel tension in their body? And I ask them to feel those areas of their body as I run the quantum touch energy in that area. And this combined work, which combines some of the emotional healing work with direct energy work, seems to be effective with pretty much everybody. It's more the exception that it's not working. Now, someone may not achieve absolute relief,
Mm-hmm.
but achieve progress. They achieve absolute progress in a palpable, noticeable improvement in the way they feel throughout the week.
This has been my experience too, that the people really do get it where they need it and how they need it, and and you said it so well, that it's not going through the wires of the telephone or the Skype call or the internet. It's going through the cosmos. And the experience has been that, yes, the vast majority of people respond really well, and it's the exception, I find, that don't respond, not the rule.
Yeah, I would agree. It's the exception, and it's a situation where many people have tremendous results in the first session or the first few sessions. And then some people want to go further, and they really want to clear out every emotional issue they've ever dealt with, and they just really enjoy the work. So they come back and they do several sessions and they make a lot of progress. And that's where I tend to see people achieving life goals, achieving massive results throughout their lives when they keep doing some extra sessions and learn to do some of the stuff for themselves, maybe take a class on it, and they start to become someone that embodies the energy themselves and is actually a source for healing for their friends and family. And those people tend to rise up in life. They're raising their vibration in a way that attracts good things to them. And those people are of course, a lot of fun to work with. I find it really is, as you said, quite rare that somebody would not respond to the
Mm-hmm.
emotional work.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes if they have a lot to work on, and so they get a lot of progress, but they still have more to do. It's kind of like if you had a big pile of garbage in your backyard and you came in with a dump truck and took a big scoop of it out and took it off to the dump, you may still have some garbage there to clear out, but you've made tremendous progress in a very short period of time. And it's just, and that progress instantly translates to a palpable feeling of lightness, improved mood, and in my experience, absolutely, it translates to all kinds of positive feelings within the next few days and throughout the week. So even if they're not 100% to the goal line after 2 sessions, they've made a lot of progress in that direction, and they can tell that they have, and they're grateful for it. So that's been my experience with the work to this point.
And Deborah, how would your experience compare with that?
Oh, I absolutely agree with everything that Tyler has said. And, the really exciting thing is that we don't know the limits of this work. I'm presented with a new opportunity on a daily basis to put this work to use, to explore, what else we can achieve, what else is possible. And, it just takes my breath away on a regular basis, because as Tyler says, it's so repeatable, really, in the sense that, within 1 or 2 sessions, you're really far down that track of helping someone, with whatever it is they're presenting to you. And, it's a marvel, and it's a complete joy to work with it. It really is.
I think as I'm listening inside my head, I'm hearing the skeptics say, well, I don't know what it is about the 3 of you people on this call, but can they possibly learn to do this? Both of you are instructors. what have been your experiences?
Well, Richard, on the last call, as you know, I spoke of my own experience of healing as a complete beginner. We were complete beginners. In 10 minutes of, applying the techniques through your video box set. We didn't even have a live instructor with us. We literally learned off a TV screen, and within 10 minutes, having collided with a truck at 80 miles an hour head on, my physical symptoms disappeared completely, and I'd had 6 years of conventional medical treatment that had failed prior to that, and 10 minutes of quantum touch healed me.
I guess the thing is, that's probably one of the most remarkable stories I've ever heard in my life, by far. And I'm just wondering, and I know in my classes when I was teaching, I would watch the pain in the room go down anywhere from about 40 to 80% on the first day from all the people in the room. And that's been pretty typical, I understand.
It's very, very typical. I was having these injections, these pain-killing injections directly into my vertebrae on a weekly basis. And I went from being in that position to using quantum touch in a 10-minute session. It was amazing. Gone. And I never required another pain-killing injection in my life.
Wow, that's just fab. That's just amazing. Okay, so what about something that a lot of people would consider far more challenging, which is bipolar?
Yeah, I've worked on bipolar, had absolutely amazing success, much to my own surprise, I've got to say. Someone had told me before, I'll work on anyone except bipolar. And of course, someone presented to me with diagnosed bipolar. And I was like, okay, should I accept this client or not? And I remembered, what you'd said about we do not know the limits of this work. Just try it and see, just trust the process. So I began working on this man who was bipolar. He was on some really heavy, serious medication. And within 2 sessions, he was completely free from medication. He was being weaned off the medication slowly during the process of the quantum touch healing, and he is now free of bipolar and is living a normal family life. And it astounded me, Richard.
For all the years since, I learned how to start doing quantum touch back in 1978. And in all the years, that's kind of been my mantra, that we don't know the limits of what's possible. But I've been more of the researcher than the practitioner all these years, and that's how I developed the self-created health and the level 2 work and other things, because I'm always stretching to find what else is possible. But to hear what you've done, both of you, with mental conditions, this is just impressive.
Yeah, I think that it's really, exactly to your point and to both of your points, it's such a simple and tremendously powerful technique that just keeps going further in what it touches and what it affects. And it affects life situations, and it affects mental health. And I have continually heard from practitioners who have learned with a single quantum touch class that they are having tremendous results, and they're just mind-boggled. They go home on Sunday after a 2-day quantum touch level 1 class, and they're emailing me back on Monday that they worked on their mother and their back pain was, super bad before, and then the back pain went away or went way down, and they're just boggled that they're able to do this after a single weekend of training, and then they move on in their lives and begin applying it. And as we apply it to mental health, all these conditions that seem to be so calcified and difficult just melt. The same way a bone and a skeleton aligns with quantum touch so easily. The calcified emotions and the calcified diagnoses melt away. Just as Deborah mentioned with bipolar, I've seen the same kind of thing where someone with bipolar results ends up not being bipolar after a period of time, no longer needing medication. And of course, they went to their doctor and they had them,
Right.
evaluate that they didn't need the medication anymore. But this is the kind of thing that is now becoming commonplace.
Wow.
What it can do.
That's just mind-blowing to me. Because I didn't think, my judgment was, well, it's probably not going to work with bipolar. And, okay, I think the most intractable, difficult, most challenging, and probably the most controversial condition we could talk about would be autism. Because, in the last 100 years, the cases of autism have gone up from, I think, about 1 in 10,000, and last I read it's become 1 in 88, and it's tripling every 10 years, which is just really scary. And I think it has to do with a lot of factors. I don't want to talk about what my opinions or my guesses are of what's causing it, but maybe I'll save that for another time. But have you had any experiences working with autism, either of you?
Yes, absolutely. I've worked on quite a number of children with autism, Richard. Generally, what I see is a vast reduction in the sort of, the levels of aggression and hyperactivity that the children seem to experience. The sort of the tantrums that they go through tend to just melt and calm away, and the child becomes much more soothed and much more present and able to focus. And probably my biggest success with autism was when I was working on a child who was in a special school for autistic children and was then able, after a few sessions, to be moved into a mainstream school. So that was really quite a great thing. So
wow. Now, I remember doing sessions years ago with autistic children, and what I saw was that I didn't know what I was looking at, and the staff member said, "Isn't this incredible?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Look at these children." And they're all just kind of like being there, and I'm thinking, "What am I looking at?" And she said, "Oh, this is lunchtime. This is the time they would be loud and all completely out of control, and they're all within themselves, just really deeply having some kind of internal experience." So, this is so exciting that we're able to do that. Now, have either of you worked with phobias?
Yeah.
Yes.
Both of you. Okay, tell me.
Go ahead, Deborah.
Spiders, airplanes, water, pigeons, elevators. You name it.
What about pigeons in elevators? I'm really have a phobia about pigeons inside elevators.
And no offense to anyone that has a pigeon phobia.
Yes.
That we'll work on it.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard of someone once who had a phobia to baked beans. These are genuine worries that people often have. Is a phobia is is something that just arises for whatever reason, and using the quantum touch level 2 work and just offering the energy to the brain centers without needing to know exactly what area of the brain is responsible, just by offering the energy there, it just seems to dissolve. I can't explain it. I don't know what's going on, but people will say, I got on the airplane, or I went over the bridge and I was happy about going over the bridge. I wasn't frightened anymore, or the darkness that I was afraid of. Oh, one example was that I had a lady come into my clinic and she was absolutely petrified of dying. She was convinced that she was going to die, and she was so phobic of the whole episode that it was a miracle that she was even in the clinic. And with one session of quantum touch, she wasn't afraid to die anymore.
Wow.
And so she could actually live.
Yes.
You know, she'd lived with this phobia since she was 16 and she was about 40. So, you know, for 24 years, she'd had this intense fear every day of dying.
Oh,
You
my
know, and
goodness.
it just went in session.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. And Tyler, I guess you've seen similar things?
I think the most rewarding one was a woman I worked with who had a fear of going outside. You know, she just this was another client, and she had been just fearful of the outdoors, and for her to tell me what a joy it was to be looking at trees and the sky and the mountains and the sun was, you know, it brought me to tears at the time. And these are the kind of results I tend to incorporate when it's a fear. I tend to run energy on the brain, and I also ask them where in their body are they feeling this feeling of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I run energy there as well, because sometimes it ends up being in the chest. And I know we've talked about it in Quantum Touch for many years. I also run the energy on the heart chakra,
Mm-hmm.
which is a place that a lot of people store emotions, or the belly. And in her case, she had this fear. It was largely in her chest and in her belly as well. So I ran energy on her brain. I ran energy on her chest and her belly. And it really, really just started to lift out of her. And as it was lifting out of her, I got this visual of just this dark cloud just floating out of her body. And when we were done, she just didn't feel as much that she was afraid of it, and then she did go outside. It was a couple days later, but when she went outside, she was so glad to be there. It was like an old friend she'd found again from when she was a child. So yeah, it's just it's very rewarding doing this work and incorporating many different aspects of emotional healing and using the energy to amplify everything we know about emotional healing, and using our intent to heal to guide the energy through the body and to the emotions. And I let people feel too. They feel what they're going through. If they're willing to, they can experience their own feelings, and it quickly releases them from their body. And you can sort of nudge them out with a little heart burst of level 2 touch right to the area where they're feeling the emotions. So it's just highly, highly effective.
That's just phenomenal. Now, just so people understand, Deborah, you were you went to college to be a scientist, and Tyler, you studied computer engineering or computer science?
Yeah, computer science, yeah.
Computer science. And so I'm not speaking to people who are like New Age happy talk folks. This is something...
You know, to that point, Richard, I would say that, you know, before I tried Quantum Touch, I had heard about chi energy.
Yes.
And I'd seen a demo once where somebody had moved people with their chi. And so I thought maybe there was something to it. But overall, you know, if you had told me about this, I wouldn't have believed it. And it was only when I, just like Deborah, had an injury. And I had a foot that wasn't healing. I had a tendon injury.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a very, very high vibration place, though nonetheless. I stayed positive throughout the injury, and I was attracting positive people to me. And this woman, I met her with her companion at the time, and she was with this man, and she said, "You should go see Richard Gordon." And so I called up the Quantum Touch School, and they said, "Well, Richard's doing research, but you should find a practitioner." And I thought, okay. So I found a practitioner, and this man could make my foot tingle reliably. And that was me in my scientific mind. You know, I was thinking, well, I don't know if he's healing me or not, but he sure can make my foot tingle every single time, and it doesn't hurt as much afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, heck, I'll take a class. You know, I'll learn how to do this myself. And I took a class, and within days of taking a single Quantum Touch Level 1 class,
right,
I was working on friends no charge at the time because I had just started, and people were having miracles. They were having emotional healing miracles, and this was just with level 1.
Yeah.
And they were having emotional healing miracles and physical healing miracles. And that's when I said, wow, this stuff works.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had to throw my prior, pure scientific basis out the window to some extent. But I would add this, Richard. This is so reproducible. You can align hips so reproducibly.
Yeah.
You can align spine so reproducibly. This is not some kind of magic. This is simply something that science hasn't figured out how to measure yet.
Well,
they will figure out how to measure it. It's just a matter of time. And when they do, they'll look back on today and think, isn't it silly that people didn't believe in it because they didn't know how to measure it yet?
Well,
actually,
actually,
it's going to catch up.
It's beyond the inability to measure it. Well, they can't measure the energy for sure. But the thing is, there's so much prejudice, dogmatism, and hostility toward the idea that love is actually a real force that can change the outer world, that they refuse to even consider this could be in existence, because if it doesn't fit their mathematics and their prior beliefs, it has to be dismissed out of hand. Plus, it would disturb a lot of reputations, money, and position to allow something to exist that doesn't fit. My friend, and I'm going to have him on the show soon, Dawson Church, does EFT work. And he did 50 studies, and they were all completely dismissed because we don't want to know that. It doesn't fit. I've been doing talk therapy for 40 years. Why do I want to learn that you can just tap somebody and reduce their, PTSD? So it's much deeper than inability to measure. There's a whole mindset of materialism that is dogmatically pushing against this thing. Now, I wanted to ask you both. I had some really good success working with dementia, and I've been hearing a lot of stories about Alzheimer's over the years, but I wanted to ask you about your experiences with dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yeah, I worked in a hospice and care home for about 6 years, during which time I was using the quantum touch. And there were a vast amount of the residents there who were suffering with either Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or dementia. And the results were absolutely astounding. Someone who perhaps wouldn't be able to lift a fork on their own would, in that space of quantum touch healing, with just energy being offered to the brain space, would be able to lift a fork and begin feeding themselves, which may not sound like a lot, but wow, it was an incredible development for someone who perhaps, with whatever condition they had, would have no recognition, no apparent recognition of whoever was in front of them, would suddenly have this recognition of, this is my carer. They're here. They're here for me now. I can feel their presence. I'm connecting with them. I'm present, and I'm lifting a fork. Wow. It was absolutely awesome to see and so touching. Yeah, so incredibly moving.
One of the practitioners told me that she worked at a place that had a lot of Alzheimer's patients, and she worked on them during her breaks. So she didn't even give full sessions, but the woman didn't want to be touched, so she just did everything long distance. And then after a short time, the woman was willing to be touched, and this is just level 1. And the woman started recognizing her, and then started recognizing friends and family.
Wow. Yeah, which is a profound thing, for that family to have that recognition once more. Must just be the most touching, the most beautiful thing. And also a lot of the twitches, and I noticed a lot of the sort of involuntary movements with these conditions really dissipated, really settled down. And the person would have more control over, their way of being. So, yeah. profound. I've also worked quite a lot, probably Tyler has too, with stroke victims as well, with the brain work, and seen remarkable things.
Yeah, I've been hearing...
strokes are really intense. I had one of my clients who had a recent stroke, and he actually called me on a Sunday, and he had the stroke the day before. And I said, we should do a session right now, because the sooner, closer to the injury, the better. And he had severe loss of ability to walk in the right side of his body, and severe impairment of his vision in the right side. And by the next day, a lot of the feeling had returned in the right side of his body, and he's able to walk normally and use the right half of his body totally normally. His vision did not come back 100%. He did get a wider range, but the movement in the right side of his body returned. And of course, the Western doctors just said, oh, well, it must have just been a pinched nerve that resolved itself or something like that. They come up with an excuse as to how it's possible that the mobility and nerve function in the right half of his body returned so quickly that, it must not have been a problem in the first place. But to your point, I think that people are gradually starting to come around to this being in the realm of possibility. And the more stories like this we get out there, the more people that have these stories and tell their friends about it and have these experiences themselves through trying things like quantum touch, trying it on their emotions, trying it on their physical body, and seeing the results, the more we will gradually change the culture. Young people born today will see these things, and they will be less resistant to it. And those will grow up into adults, and they're the decision makers of the future. And as those people get into positions of authority and whatnot, I expect there will be a paradigm shift where instead of resisting the concept that this is available and amazing and wonderful, they'll say, my goodness, we need to pour government research dollars into this. We need to start working on figuring out what this is and spreading the word. And I think that revolution of thought is coming, and the wave is coming, and it will come. The more of these experiences, as Deborah has pointed out, and as you pointed out, are touching all these different people.
That's so well said. Everything you've said has been so beautiful. I'm so reminded of that one particular Star Trek movie where they move back in time and they visit a hospital. And the doctor is horrified. He says, what is this, the Middle Ages? You're going to drill a hole in somebody's head? Are you crazy? It's like, and we're seeing, people given poison because they've got mental problems. And it's just so sad. And there are a refusal to actually study this. If anybody's got millions of dollars and you want to create an institute or something where we could actually put this stuff to test, I have no problem researching and studying this stuff and putting it to the test. I love doing that. It's just that I don't have the budget to do so. But in the meantime, if people are interested in learning about this for themselves, that would be fantastic. Well, I see that, Tyler, you've got to drop out because you've got another appointment to go to, and I'll continue this conversation with Deborah. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. It was great to hear your voice.
So much. Good to hear you as well, Deborah, and looking forward to seeing you in the United States shortly.
Yeah, I'll be there next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And Richard, thank you so much for having me on the call.
Oh, well, we got to do it again one of these days.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, folks. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Wow, that was fantastic.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, it's just the same things that you're saying from another point of view, but it just adds so much hearing it again.
Oh, it's incredible. And just going back to the stroke example, Richard, I had one lady in Canada just 2 weeks ago, and she'd had a stroke. She was in hospital, in intensive care. She'd been in intensive care for a whole week, and the doctors, the top medical people there, were basically saying, we think you know, this is really bad, you know, the prognosis is not good whatsoever. It would honestly be a miracle if this lady survived. And I had her sister email me and say, is there any way you can do something? And I said, okay, let's set up a Skype call. I worked with the sister as a surrogate. She was in Canada, I was in the UK. It took 40 minutes, the session, and that lady, the sister who'd had the stroke, was discharged from hospital the next day.
Oh my God.
It was unbelievable even to me, and I've been doing this for 12 years. That was unbelievable to me. The lady who'd had the stroke hadn't been able to use particularly her limbs. She wasn't even, you know, able to lift up a cup of coffee or walk or anything like this, and she was drinking coffee, able to take her own medication with her own hands, and was walking that day unassisted down the corridor. And her sister told me she wasn't walking slowly, Deborah, she was walking really quite quickly. She was discharged. It was like 40 minutes, you know, over Skype.
I think,
you know, and I see this time and time again with head injuries, car crash, you know, people who've been in car crashes, significant things going on, bleeding in the brain, you know, blood clots and so on, and things, you know, the person could be in intensive care, and the doctors could be saying, you know, at that point, you know, this is really, really bad. The family are preparing themselves for the worst. And then we give the healing a try, and suddenly, you know, the body just melts and it heals itself.
My experience has generally been the sooner you get to the problem. And the traumatic injuries generally respond very quickly. Especially if you get to them soon. But once it's more calcified, it's been there for years and years, it still can respond miraculously, but not quite as reliably. It would be the generalization that I'd put on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. But, you know, I just hold the space for the possibility of any possibility of it healing right there, right then, because I've seen it so many times too, you know.
I mean, this is... I'm just almost lost for words here. I would think that people listening to you think, I mean, can I even believe what you're telling me? I mean, it's like so far afield from the experience of the medical industry, and it is an industry, and the practitioners thinking, well, I've never heard results like this, you know, and yet people just have to open their hearts and open to the possibility, and that's the show. It's like the possible human, that we have these abilities. We just have to be willing to explore them to find out what's actually there. And you know, the most exciting idea is maybe you and I almost don't even have a clue of where we can go with this.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and you used a really key word there, Richard, as well. You said about, you know, it's about the heart. For me, it's about the love. The love is transformational.
Yes.
It really does have impact. It does have power, you know, and it's just awesome. And, you know, I was working with someone who'd had a baby, the cutest little baby, but she was devastated with postnatal depression, you know, absolutely in the pits of despair. And, you know, for a time that really, you know, offers the potential of being such a joyous occasion, a new child, a new life, you know, a miracle really. And the mother was just so devastated to be able to just sit with her and offer the love and watch her just transform in front of your eyes. It's just incredible. It's this work is just a blessing. It's a gift to mankind. It really is.
Well, wow, that's just so beautiful. You know, I was talking to one of the practitioners a few months ago, and she was telling me that she goes to this church in volunteer service, and everybody apparently was being assigned to work with somebody. and to try to do healing on somebody. And the person they gave her was this man with really terrible Parkinson's, who was walking in the most crazy kind of way that only a Parkinson's person could probably do. And she thought, oh no, don't give me him. But she worked with him week after week. And what she noticed, and she called it, I think I videotaped that one, she said it's like science fiction.
Yeah.
That at the end of the session, he'd be walking like almost completely normal. And then a week later, he'd be kind of more back to where he was. But just that we can even make this effect on somebody is incredible.
I mean, it almost is a bit like science fiction. I mean, I've got 2 people I'm working with just now, Richard, who've had major replacement surgery.
Mm-hmm.
One had a hip replacement and one had a knee replacement. And both occasions, both instances of major, surgery, their physiotherapists have been utterly gobsmacked at how quickly not only the wound has repaired itself post-quantum touch, but also their flexibility, their weight-bearing ability, their strength in that leg. It really increases healing time, from surgical procedures, in a science fiction kind of way. Well, physiotherapists can't believe it.
Arthur C. Clarke wrote that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're up against right now, is the idea that we could actually open up to our love, to surrender to the depth of that love, whether you just connect with it directly or you like Jesus or however you want to do it, it's fine by us.
Yeah.
And you connect to the depth of that love, and you learn how to open up to it and amplify it and project it. And that's really where the level 2 work has gone.
And the interesting thing is, Richard, when you ponder that question, how deep does love really go?
Yes.
People are going into bliss, people are having oneness experiences, people's level of conscious awareness, people are shifting into such a high vibrational energy field that they're having these enormous spiritual, experiences, we could call them awakenings, realizations that, we are really more than this physical body of matter that we see. We're so much more, and that is really, the question, how deep is this love? How deep does it really go?
Yeah, that's what I put in the book, that to ask that question. And I think this is probably the most significant evolutionary development of human beings at any time, which is to really go into the love, because it was, science has done amazing things. We have cars and cell phones and telephones and all kinds of great stuff. And we're doing, it's obviously a very effective technology up to a point. But the materialism breaks down and destroys itself without the compassion and the love.
Absolutely. And I've been working recently with a lady who went through a really traumatic divorce, really, not a nice breakup with her husband at all, very much unsettled. She was in a complete emotional mess. And with one session of guiding her into that love that she really is, that is her true nature, she was astounded at the difference. She called me up and she said, I can't even relate to any of that negativity anymore. I can't find it. I couldn't find it if I tried. It's not there anymore, in terms of my husband and what I went through, and it's just gone. She couldn't access it at all. All she could feel was the love and the peace and the gift that he was in her life.
And this is what people are truly seeking. This is the more important thing. This is the desirable outcome that the material acquisitions don't provide us. No matter how successful you are, Even if you win the rat race, as someone said, you're still a rat. Because we didn't grow, we didn't transform, we didn't become more. And what you're talking about is the deepest, most profound transformation that can allow us to be ourself.
Exactly.
And what does that mean?
That's a whole nother show, Richard.
Well, that's what I want more than anything, is to continual exploration and depth of self and that self-knowledge, and to surrender into the love without limit.
Yeah. Because
everything else is shallow. Would you like infinite love or all the chewing gum you can have? Right? And I was like, it's just a ridiculous question that people have lost themselves. And it's so absurd on some level that people got seduced by the shallowness of the culture and the technology and lost or forgot and have been misguided as well by forces and people and institutions that want to manipulate and control and divert people from that core experience of that depth of love that's inside. You know, I just feel like we are opening doors for people who want to pass through and move beyond what they've known before. And I don't want to make this podcast just about quantum touch, although it's really easy to find people having extraordinary experiences using this work, but I want to explore all the other kinds of evolutionary developments that we can experience, and not just through my work, but through other people's work and things that you've been doing. And I wanted to go further, since I still have you on the call, to explore some of your own growth. And you were talking about being able to go into deeper and deeper spaces and this like ocean of love and take it further and continue letting your nervous system evolve as you do it.
Yes, absolutely. I think, there is a definite progression in the nervous system and how much it can have, how much it has capacity to embody at a certain point in time. And I think, the more you explore the work, the more that capacity is expanding and the more it can conduct, if you like. So it seems to be that the healing field, if you like, becomes so much more universal in some sort of way. And the love, Richard, I can't tell you the extreme of love, this boundless ocean of intense, it's, I would have to call it grace. It feels so incredible, so divine, so reverent. Just yesterday, for example, there was a 3-hour period of, I can't say whether it was an ascent or a descent, an emanation or an emanation. All there was the most exquisite, absolutely exquisite love. And that is available to each and every one of us if we're just given the key to the door. If someone can just show us how to explore the inside of us and tap that infinite power and potential that we all are. This is accessible to everyone. It's your birthright.
I would think that in a training to allow people to experience the bliss and the oneness, that using the level 2 work could be a tremendous asset at preparing people, or just setting the stage for them to be able to start opening that way, because there can be brain blockages or nervous system blockages or identity blockages that could keep them from going deeper.
Absolutely, and the level 2 work just gives you an access point through the heart center, the spiritual heart center, through the work where, really focusing in on the brain, enabling us to access these higher levels, more refined levels of consciousness, and again, there are no limits, it's like the 100-room mansion up there, there's so much more to explore. And every time you find a door, there's another door leading into another room and so on. So it just grows and becomes brighter and lighter and ever more beautiful and radiant.
Well,
it's astonishing.
I was planning on having this conversation with you privately later, but I decided right just this moment to do it right here on the call. But I'm thinking that we should put together a workshop about oneness.
Oh, yes, definitely.
And maybe a retreat.
Oh, fantastic.
Where
Perfect.
Where what we can do is create this space for people to have their brains worked on, for letting go of their judgments, for getting energy, and then practicing going into bliss states and letting go of the old identities. Because
that would be a beautiful workshop, Richard.
I'm so much more interested in that than, seeing and perceiving is great, and I'm all in favor of people learning to open up their senses.
Yeah, definitely opens the door to going beyond the senses themselves, which is where everything gets interesting.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this is so exciting. Are there any other mental conditions that occur to you? I'm kind of looking over the list here I have before me. Did we talk about panic attacks?
Oh, panic attacks. I've had amazing success on those. Absolutely, yeah. Especially concerning phobias, when people get into such a highly strung state regarding fears, phobias, anything of that nature, panic attacks and things just very, very much dissolve away, and people can't relate to them anymore. I think you'd said in the previous call, you always ask someone to grade the issue on a scale 0 to 10.
Sure.
Because oftentimes after you've done the work, they can't remember. They say, what panic attack?
I don't remember having any panic attacks. Who, me? Yes.
Yeah.
I've seen that kind of thing. And did you mention, I know I brought up Parkinson's. Have you had experiences with Parkinson's?
Just in the care home where I was working for that long period, and again seen the patient's ability to walk improve, ability to coordinate improve, the shaking and so on, tended to really just calm down and move away. So certainly there have been improvements in that area. Yes.
I think the generalization is that the body heals itself, that love is like water's the universal solvent, love is the universal energy that accelerates and promotes healing, and that as we learn to hold that field of that love vibration, the other person can match or entrain to that vibration, and then their body and spiritual intelligence accesses it and does the healing that it wants to do. And that's why all real modalities will have effectiveness. And all negative modalities will have a synergistic negative effect. I read that the third leading cause of death is physician error, usually drug-induced. But when you give complementary therapies, it's like a complement, they complement each other, and that all positive therapies are synergistically positive. And so anybody doing any energy work at all with love is going to be doing some good. But there's ways of being more effective for certain.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I was curious because I was so astounded when you talked on the last call and you said that things were dropping out of the room, like onto the floor from nowhere.
Yeah.
I didn't even follow up. I was like, this is so astounded. I was like, what the?
The universe this physical universe isn't all that it seems. That's my experience. That's my own experience. What has been happening to me over the last 12 years since discovering quantum touch is a journey of just real jaw-dropping amazement. I can't really put it any more, succinctly than that. But, it's unbelievable, honestly, but because of my background, I was so left-brained, Richard. I was really left-brained. I have an honours degree, a master's degree in science. If you'd told me 12 years ago
Yes.
the things that I would have experienced and witnessed with my own eyes for myself, on a day-to-day basis, I would never have believed you, because I was so, focused on science. It was my life, But nowadays, astonishing things happen. Astonishing things happened not only in terms of my own healing within my first session of quantum touch, but also in my perceptive abilities, my intuitive abilities, noticing things about our universe that I not really noticed before, how bendable it actually is, how fluid it is, how sort of, insubstantial things really are. And nowadays, things appear and disappear. I was talking to someone the other day who was having similar experiences, and he said that he was driving along a highway and a 15-minute section of the highway disappeared.
Wow.
And these are stories that, still drop my jaw, still astound me, but because of my own experiences, I know that, these things are not beyond the realm of possibility.
I totally hear you, and my experience is that what you're saying is completely accurate, and like explorers on the great ocean, hundreds of years ago, we're just exploring, like taking our little baby steps out of our addiction to materiality and logic. And I'll tell you, when I was starting to teach energy work, I started with polarity therapy in the mid-70s. And I was taking this trip, and I was in Wisconsin, and this woman and I had a wonderful time. I was teaching 3 classes there. And toward the end of my stay, we weren't lovers, but we were very close friends at this point. And we were sitting in her car. It was an old car, and it had one of those flat seats in the front seat. And she was on the driver's side, and I was leaning. My shoulder was leaning against her shoulder, and my head was leaning against her head. And I remember being in an incredible state of inner peace. I felt so deeply content, maybe beyond anything I'd ever known. And it was just so completely content in that moment. And all of a sudden, our heads fell through each other's head.
Yes, I've had the same experience.
Wow. Tell me.
Yeah, I remember sitting on the couch once with my mother, and we were having a cuddle, a mother-daughter cuddle.
Yes.
And our heads seemed to mold together very slowly.
Whoa.
And suddenly all there was infinite space, infinite consciousness, infinite light, and the peace beyond all understanding that you've just mentioned, Richard. It was the most beautiful, the most bond-forming experience that you could ever wish for. It was so incredible.
This is really where we're heading. This
Yeah.
is where we're heading, to be able to surrender to the depths of love.
Yeah.
And to be able to experience the reality as the illusion that I believe it is. Even the physicists tell us, you've heard that we're almost entirely space.
Yeah.
But we are 99%, and it's 99.9999999% space. That's 1 in 10 million parts is a something. And the something that's in there, that 1 in 10 million part, pops in and out of existence.
Yeah.
It responds to ways of measuring. It requires vast equipment to even find a justification for it having any mass whatsoever. So 1 in 10 million parts has this Higgs boson mass explanation part of it. It is extraordinary, Lee. I mean, if you were going to build a physical reality and you didn't really have a lot to work with, you'd say, well, what if we just use 1 in 10 million parts of a sort of something that doesn't really exist all the time, and then create a reality out of that? That sounds like a pretty elegant way to create the illusion that there's something physical here.
You know, a teacher once said to me, we're just particles of light flickering in and out of existence. A bit like, a TV screen.
Yes.
I thought that was a nice way to put it.
I have been thinking that the fact that we can see each other at all is a trick of light.
Absolutely. And I told you about my bathtub experience before, didn't I? That happened when I just got into quantum touch. I was standing in the bath and I was running energy into my hips and my legs disappeared.
Okay. So when you told me that last week, I didn't even get I kind of imagined you laying down in the bathtub.
No, I was standing up.
And the soapy water was blocking your vision or something. Okay.
No.
So
I could see. Yeah, I could see my legs as I was running the energy.
Yes.
And then suddenly my legs disappeared and all there was light from the waist down.
Oh my.
Now, I was fairly astonished, as you can imagine.
Now, did it look like a light body where the light was taking the place of where the legs would be?
It was sort of like a spaciousness that was illumined, if that makes any sense. It was lit, definitely, but just a space, And it wasn't long after that, the walls were very much movable and see-throughable and, like a liquid, a floaty sort of a light. Yeah.
I've heard it said that the reality is like a hologram. If you were to have a hologram of light in front of you, like something that hasn't been quite invented yet, instead of having a television set or a movie, you've got this whole light hologram where you could see the people, opening doors and greeting each other and so forth, as if it was a real movie. But you could put your hand through it because it's just a hologram. However, if you were in the hologram, the door would be solid, right? But looking at it from the outside, it's all illusion. And that's what I think the reality is. I think the reality is a hologram. And sometimes, like when I've had those mushroom experiences, I experience myself outside the hologram. I go, oh my God, this is so funny. We created this whole thing as a growing experience, and the whole universe is here. It's just hysterically amazing. But from inside, oh my God, this is so real, and it's so painful, it's so challenging, it's so difficult, or whatever, that inside the hologram, it's totally real. But from the outside, it's just an illusion. But if you surrender sufficiently to the love and the oneness, the inside reveals itself to be the illusion as well.
Yeah. And just to say, that this is obtainable without mushrooms, without, drugs of any kind. This is available au naturel, completely.
Well,
I've never used anything.
Yes, well, that's been my desire, is to be able to access it, but I've been kind of stubborn or blocked in certain ways. So I took advantage of the fact that I could get a peek of my future through a little help. It was really funny because when I was about 23, my mother confided to my younger brother, and she said, I think Richard took acid one time and he never came back. And that was the most insightful thing she had ever said. She was right. I had experienced this love and this connection, And I didn't even have a word for spirituality then, but it was spirituality. I had connected to my spirituality, and I needed the help because the circles that I was running myself in weren't very helpful. And when you think about it, I would be the last person to ever come up with quantum touch and level 2 and self-created health and the other things, because I was so shut down and so locked into the materialist perspective too, which is kind of why I have such an affinity and affection for skeptics. But the open-minded skeptics, the one willing to experience the truth, and not just the hostile bigots who call themselves skeptics.
Yes.
Oh, Deborah, thank you. This is so good.
Oh, thank you, Richard. It's an absolute joy as ever to get together like this, and just share these experiences that are available to everyone.
So when you were saying on the last call, and I was just so, I love the English word gobsmacked. No American has ever used that word.
Really?
No, no one ever uses that word, but we always get tickled when we hear it because it's really funny. But, so you said things were dropping on the floor?
Yes, appearing out of nowhere, manifesting within thin air.
But
you would hear a thud,
yes,
and look over, and anything could be there. And just as one example that I said on the last call, I shared it then, was that it was like a sort of a golden bronze, heavy, but the size of a palm.
Yeah.
Sort of a kind of a Buddha, not exactly a Buddha, but sort of a Buddha. It looked a little bit kind of Egyptian or something of that nature. But my experience with these manifestations is that over some time they do disappear again, back into the ether from where they came.
Well, please photograph them from time to time.
Sure, we do. And it's very, very mysterious,
Yes.
But I know a great deal of other people who experience similar sort of phenomena.
So, were you meditating when this happens, or just?
Yes, we're very much,
All right.
In a particular state of consciousness when this goes on, and everyone witnesses the same thing. We have witnessed extraordinary things happen that just, open your mind to, to possibility, to potential, to wonder, actually, to awe.
I think that may be the message, actually. It's to experience the awe. What a wonderful word that is. Too bad it became a cliche to say awesome, because that is one of the best words ever. But what else have you seen materialize?
Oh, flowers, fresh flowers, fragrances that everyone smells at the same time. All kinds of things. And sometimes things actually manifest under the seat that you're sitting on. So actually between, the chair and your legs, something will appear, and you only know it's there when you stand up, but it certainly wasn't there before.
Oh, that's phenomenal. That is just amazing.
Almost, like gifts from spirit. Yeah.
That's really what it is, but usually they don't come physically, not gift wrapped or clunking on the floor. That's hysterical. Well, have you had experience with animals in these regards?
In terms of healing, you mean?
Well, in terms of anything that's just, I just have the feeling that maybe there's something going on as well. Communications, healings.
Oh, all sorts. A lot of the way I started out with quantum touch was very much with animals, because I, was working a lot with, the veterinary profession at the time. I was very much a horse lover, and horses are so open, as all animals are, I find, to the energy work. And horses would literally convey what I would sort of call an energy packet, an energy bundle of information to me, which would enable a diagnosis. of what was actually going on there. Now, you have to be very careful with the word diagnosis
Yes.
and, work, in conjunction with veterinarians, doctors, and so on. But very, very frequently, for example, I was working on a horse, and this energy bundle of information would arrive in my consciousness, and I would feel it so strongly. And it would be along the lines of, the presence of red worms, for example.
Wow.
And, I would go to the vet and say, is there a potential for these red worms to be, infesting this horse? Could that be part of the issue that this horse is experiencing? And the veterinarian would test for these red worms, and lo and behold, the horse was infested with these red worms. So, how can you put something like that into words? The possibility for communication, and I love that word actually, commune,
Yes.
is to be energetically with that the animal's energy field. So we commune with the horse, and in that communion, that attunement, that blending, that communion, we become one with the horse.
Right.
And we basically are receptors for the sentience of that horse and everything that is presenting to us. And in this case, it was the presence of these red worms.
I really believe this is our spiritual destiny.
Yeah.
That accessing our abilities is really where our destiny is going. And the supposedly really bright thinkers of our time at this time appear to me to be so profoundly misguided. And a prime example would be like a Ray Kurzweil, thinking that we're going to upload or download our consciousness to a machine, thinking that our brain is just digital, and that you'll be able to do that, and that we'd be able to live inside robots and be immortal, is childishly absurd and silly. That we are these spiritual beings of infinite love, and what, you want to live in a box? It's like
a tin box.
A tin box. Yeah, you want to be the Tin Man, looking for a heart.
Yeah, exactly.
It says Wizard of Oz. If I only had a heart.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, Richard, and that's what you've brought to us in the level 2 work, is just a whole new way of accessing that heart center that we all are, and that's where it's all at. It really is.
I talked to one man, and he was telling me, he said before he took the level 2 class, he had forgotten that he had a heart, heart chakra, and to get back to be able to feel his heart that way and be able to honor it, it was like, that's priceless.
Yeah.
It's just priceless to be able to reconnect.
Absolutely. I worked with a man recently who said, he hadn't been able to feel anything since his wife died 10 years ago.
Wow.
He felt dead. He couldn't feel any emotions, anything, no love. There was just nothing moving inside of him at all. He was dead. And using the level 2 work, we were able to, just guide him gently back into his heart. And he took this great big intake of breath, almost like a tsunami had just hit him. And he said, oh my goodness, has that been there all this time, and he was like overjoyed to feel again, to just feel what's inside of us.
God, it's so incredible that how, I think when I was on the mushrooms, I just kept repeating to myself, how could I have forgotten? And it wasn't like I'm beating myself up, it's just like to know who and what we are, to feel it with such infinite love. And some people say, well, you're just having a hallucination, but it isn't, because it's a real experience. And whether it was a hallucination or not, but I know it isn't, it wouldn't matter, because it is a real experience that you take with you. But to know that we are capable of even experiencing this.
Yes. You know, and the more people who access that feeling, you know, the world would be such a more lovely and joyous place. You know, war, for example, just couldn't be a possibility.
It's not. And we are really facing some very frightening possibilities, especially with Fukushima right now.
Yeah.
But the good news this week was that Japan asked the rest of the world for help after 2.5 years of failing to get this thing under control that's continuing to unwind and get worse and worse. And all by itself, that could be a human extinction event. If they try to move the fuel rods and they blow up. But from a spiritual level of consciousness, it wouldn't really affect what we are as beings of love. We just wouldn't be living here on earth, that's all. Because the consciousness is not the body and it's not the lifetime. The consciousness is what we are. And this body and this life and this planet is the expression of it. But
and even beyond consciousness itself.
Well, now you're taking me to a place I don't know anything about. Okay.
Who's the one? Yeah, well, that's another show.
All right. Well, I don't want to talk about it. I want to experience that one.
Yeah.
Yes. Well. Oh, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to chat about at all? Any other topics you'd like to bring up, or are we drawing into a close?
Yeah, we've chatted so much, haven't we?
Oh, I know,
it's been so fascinating, though, to hear Tyler's stories, to hear yours. You know,
and both of you
what a journey.
Both of you are so articulate and in your heart, and I'm so honored that you guys would pick up this work and run with it as well as you have, and be so inspired to share it with so many other people. And
well, thank you for bringing the work to the world, Richard. You know, if it weren't for you,
it's what I do. You know, I'm always looking to see what's next, and I think that you're my teacher now.
Oh.
And so, I mean, I'm always looking. I go through these phases. Like, I'll be in a space where I just really want to learn something, and then once I've learned it, now I really want to teach something. And I go back and forth, and so sometimes I'm clearly in a learning phase, and other times I'm in a disseminating phase. And when I find something that I really want to learn that's worthwhile, you know, I become a student again, and it's so amazing to me that the educational system got set up to put red diseased marks on pieces of paper and make people feel humiliated for making mistakes, when learning is one of the most fun and exciting things that a human being could possibly do. And they burn it out of people, that joy. They burn out their joy. Like, well, I don't want to go to school, I don't want to read a book, I don't want to learn anything. I was like, what are you talking about? This is really fun. If it's living stuff that you're learning, not a bunch of dry, boring, busy work crap.
Well, one thing's for sure, Quantum Touch is always fun. The workshops are just fun-filled, and the work itself is just extraordinary.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's about. It's about fun and joy and, you know, celebrating the awesomeness of every day, you know.
This spiritual teacher I worked with for many years, Lazarus, would say the process of getting there, or the steps of getting there, either way, the steps of getting there are the experiences of being there. So if we're going to teach something about healing, the process of running the energy should feel incredibly good.
Yeah, and it does.
Yeah, as you do the breathing and body awareness exercises, and we link them together, and we call that running energy, that has to feel good, or else you're not doing healing work.
Exactly.
And I've always felt so off about this idea of attunements. Because how can I give you something you don't already have access to? How could I be more connected to the universe than you? How could you put 12 ounces in a 10-ounce glass and you're more spiritual than me? We're all made up of the stuff of spirituality. And so I've never had any, symbols or attunements or things that I'm going to give you, and then when I give you, you'll have the ability that I have. To me, that's just spiritually insulting. Because we're all we're all in this together. We're all made of the same fabric of the all that is.
Yes, Emily Bronte has a beautiful quote about that. I can't remember it quite exactly off the top of my head, but it's whatever you are, you and I are, we're made of the same stuff, the exact same stuff.
Or as Joni Mitchell said, we are stardust.
Yeah.
Golden billion-year-old carbon. And that's actually true. Everything on Earth comes from a star that exploded.
It's just incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, when you consider this universe is such an amazing place.
Yeah, so everyone was born to shine,
Yeah, and the tragedy is we forgot who we are.
Yeah.
In this crazy dream where people forgot what they were about. And hopefully, well, as the prophet said, we're here to awaken from the illusion of our separateness.
Yeah.
And to me, this is the ultimate teaching, is the oneness, the connectiveness that we have. And it's only through love that we can access it.
Yes.
Well, maybe on that note, we should draw to a close. Deborah,
okay.
Much love, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week, and let's plan out a retreat.
Yes, for sure. That would be wonderful.
And I will be attending.
Okay.
And maybe some
I'll
of
be
you,
there.
maybe some of you listening to this will be attending too. Okay, with much love and gratitude, Deborah. Thank you.
Oh, likewise, Richard, so much.
You are the best. Thanks again. And
Thank you,
and thanks to
Richard.
Tyler also for his
Yes,
contribution.
Tyler.
He is fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, take good care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.